It's time for de-extinction for one lucky creature, as we once again vote for the next addition to ARK Survival Ascended. Welcome back folks, my name is Freyn, and today we'll be going over the details of our exclusive Extinction finalists for anyone who hasn't braved the Forum Wasteland. Such a titanic moment in the story may well require some colossal tames, and there has been quite a few heavy hitters in these submissions. But as always, please remember that abilities are not guaranteed to carry over, and your primary focus should be on the creature itself, even if Wildcard have been pretty consistent with the adaptions lately. As always, I will try and keep it brief, and if you find this helpful, I hope you will consider liking, subscribing, or possibly joining our new community Discord. More on that later. But now, without further delay, it's time to shout and roar, get on the floor, everybody do the Sauroposeidon. This lizard earthquake god is our first entry, and is so big its leg bones were originally mistaken for tree trunks. Our design, on the other hand, treats them more as drumsticks, aiming to bring a musical flair to the game. Able to shuffle in any direction and turn on the spot, the Sauro would be quite at home on a dance floor, but its real talents lie as a drummer. Anytime an attack is repeated, the Sauro will use it to set a tempo and prompt you to maintain the rhythm, with each subsequent stomping beat increasing as damage as long as you can keep time. And once you're feeling adequately pumped and ready, it's time to bellow your heart out, providing various buffs to allies based on which insta-attacks were used during your song. Drumming stomps, clapping tail cracks, and head-banging neck slams are all available and provide different bonuses, with your Dino Bard's effects even being amplified by Mammoth Drum or Uti Roar accompaniment for a true prehistoric battle of the bands. The theme goes further still with a tech saddle of speaker stacks and a taming method utilising the rarely seen war drums and some well-timed tranquilizers. Because what successful musician doesn't indulge a little, right? Not to be outdone in the size department though comes our second entry and the return of the Dreadnoughtus. Aiming to be slightly smaller than the Titanosaur, this would still be one of the largest tameable creatures in the game, and the largest permanent tame. On Extinction, size matters, and the Dreadnought has a bone to pick with anything else trying to rival its sheer bulk, gaining a passive buff in the presence of anything larger than a Parasaur. Heavily armed with 5 equipable turret slots and a chest-mounted harpoon, bringing a full broadside from this battleship to bear would be enough to sink even the strongest opposition's hopes. And should its onboard generator run out, it can even bring biological artillery to the field, with its colossal throat acting as the barrel of a great acidic cannon in a pinch. A mighty roar with epic windup can weaken corrupts, disable tech, and inflict damage proportional to how much punishment is received during the animation, making timing key and counterplay important. A tame as powerful as the Dreadnought can be quite temperamental though, and will require a rotating set of interactions to not only tame, but also keep under control, although with a much greater degree of leniency once it's brought to heel. Our third entry is the Thylacosmilus, a marsupial-like mammal with one of the strangest jawlines you'll ever see. Aiming to promote more engaging combat, this design features 2 different variants built around a new weak point debuff. The regular unrideable Smilus features a brief taunt and causes any nearby creature to periodically gain what it calls weak points. These weak points can then be attacked for a bonus akin to something like a headshot. The larger rideable alpha variant, on the other hand, would be able to inflict weak points at will, and its roar would let all nearby allies join its pack to exploit these, regardless of species. The alphas are a very rare spawn, both in the wild and through breeding, but should you be lucky enough to find one, you'll require a shield to parry its attacks for a brief stun window, enabling you to mount and break the creature in. If instead you'd rather go the breeding route, you will of course need a normal variant to breed from, and this can be tamed by removing all armor and weaponry, carefully approaching and feeding trophy items to boost affinity. Next up, we have another returning entry in the Gorgonops, one of the largest carnivores to exist prior to its own extinction around 250 million years ago, and a frequent familiar face in these finals. If given life to hunt again, the Gorgon would be found living in the scorched wastelands outside of Sanctuary, fiercely protecting its dens from anything attempting to get at its defenseless pups. Should a survivor successfully snag one though, they'll gain an incredible tracking companion, initially able to follow the scent of any individual creature it's exposed to, but it can also sniff out max levels, boost the detection of other tames, and with the right training even track entire species. Further abilities for our prehistoric bloodhound include a unique sled saddle to drag unconscious creatures to safety, a combat boost when fed some element dust, immunity to shocks, poisons and stuns, and some bonus damage and passive deterrence to corrupted, causing all but the largest to flee in the presence of a Gorgonops pack. Number 5 on our list is the Aerosteon, a mid-sized pack-hunting theropod that lurks in the dangerous forbidden zone of future Earth. Naturally, for something living in such a hostile environment, the Aeros has developed a few potent tricks to help it survive. Between speed-boosting invisibility, rapid damaging forward dash, and Deinonychus-like climbing, it's no surprise that it can stay alive. But perhaps its most potent defense is the quills it fires to slow, blind, and even play auditory tricks on anyone unlucky enough to be hit. Should you brave the zone to try and tame one though, you'll need to present it with a body. Quite a tough task in a zone mostly occupied by corrupts, but should you succeed, you'll then be prompted to play a game of hide and seek, following its misty trail as it vanishes in order to present it with a corrupt heart feeding. And this fondness for bodies carries through to its passives as well, with an increased harvest rate and buff selection gained after consuming enough corpses, the options for which include increased damage, mobility, or regeneration. In at number 6 is the Maevia Eureka, or Fluffy Jumping Spider, former multi-finalist now with a bit more punch. As you would expect from any arachnid, the Maevia comes with wall climbing and a web of silk slinging functionality. A tranquilizing bowler to aid in taming, a sticky lure to get prey where you want them, and a handy bridge or ladder building option to help your smaller tames navigate the upper reaches of the city. To help it fit in with the extinction environment, a new armoured saddle is proposed with built-in turret slots, helping to lend firepower against the larger threats of the map, but it is of course the leap that gives it its name. With similar leg launching power to a Procoptodon, a Maevia can propel itself huge distances, or, if desired, directly at an enemy with target tracking precision. Should you be interested in a mate pair of Maevias, the male will be your first target, as once tamed through a small emote game, he will provide a dance ability to help entice your female. Although, in an unusual twist, full taming is not actually required for the female, as upon reaching 50% affinity, she will present you with an eggy gift to raise on your own, while the 100% of course will give you the female herself. Next up is the Darwinopterus, a tiny pterosaur with a large head crest from around 160 million years ago, although naturally this is ARK and things are notably scaled up. In its default state, the Darwin is not too dissimilar to a pteranodon in power, but it harbours an intense hatred of corruption and preys only on the purple denizens that inhabit the map. If sufficiently fed with corrupt nodules or element shards, its crest will grow into a larger sharpened blade, granting a stacking damage buff and 2 new attacks. The first of these is a short gliding execution against low health targets, while the second is a rapid, heavy-hitting flurry that breaks away all corruption stacks from the crest in one go, rather than waiting for them to be chipped down through a regular assault. Corruption consumption forms the basis of its taming too, as once it's been fed enough to grow its crest, a wild Darwin will allow a survivor to ride it and go hunt the element-infused beast together, until the crest breaks back down to its normal state, and the process repeats. Soaring in at number 8 with another pterosaur is the mighty Hatzegopteryx, an immense flyer that rivaled the Quetzal in size and was considered an apex of its time, potentially even preying on small sauropods. Primarily a combat flyer, its position of Lord of the Skies in ARK would be cemented by a roughly 50% size boost, becoming large enough that with a well-placed dive you can grapple anything larger than an Argy and force them rapidly to the ground. It's strong enough to cling to surfaces and even specific parts of the Titans, against which it would gain a damage and defense buff to further aid in its aggressive tendencies. Additional extinction-specific traits include increased damage to corrupt and higher gathering from element nodes, while defeating any of the map's overlords will unlock a special tech platform saddle able to maintain its angle at all times and deploy skiff-like stairs to aid with boarding. Naturally, something this imposing is unlikely to be subdued easily though, and will only follow a survivor that can prove themselves, requiring first the acquisition of another Hatz's jaw and the weakening of your chosen specimen, before you can risk mounting and breaking it in, similar to a sort of airborne Andrewsarchus. Our 9th contender is the Edmontonia, an ankylosaur-like dinosaur that swapped its tail weapon for a set of large forward-facing spikes on its shoulders. Like its early game cousin, it would be a great metal gatherer, but the Edmontonia further supplements this by directly collecting spark powder from rocks, something it will need an abundance of in order to employ its main focus, fire. Using either a cloudy emission or direct spike attack, it would first apply a stacking powder debuff to its opponents, before sparking ignition with a rapid strike of its tail, and engulfing its enemies in flame. Naturally, as an ankylosaur, it's quite defensive as well, with its spiked hide able to be harvested to form placeable barricades and provide a damage reduction and thorn-like reflection to any attackers it can keep to its front. Something made easier to achieve thanks to an on-spot rotation and toggled stance to determine which end it places forwards when moving. Finally, taming this twisted fire starter uses a combination of these factors, as it applies its flint debuff to waves of creatures for you to hand ignite and raise affinity. And now for our final entry today, we have the Ozimek, an oddly proportioned gliding reptile referred to by its author as an anti-flyer and somewhat of an idiot. Decently quick on its feet with a webbed skirt and high jumping, the Aussie isn't too far from a Maewing in the mobility department, but rather than using this to carry babies to safety, it instead uses it to hunt down airborne prey. Able to lock target to anything in the air beneath it, including other Aussies, it can execute a rapid interceptive dive, biting away with stamina draining venom until they run out of steam or successfully shake themselves free. The only two options available to any unlucky victims thanks to a unique whip immunity. If placed into a sentry mode, even an unridden Aussie can put this interceptive talent to remarkable use, bringing down any flies that may approach your base and OSD, then handily placing their harvested remains in nearby food troughs before returning to their starting point. As you may expect, its hatred of air travel plays into its taming as well. As while tranquilizers can be employed, the most efficient method is to pump your own flies with narcotics and trick it into biting them. A tricky balancing act of keeping your tame aloft, but still having enough to put the Aussie to sleep. And there we have it, another month's supply of bad jokes and the key aspects of our 10 finalists for Extinction's new creature. There's been an incredible amount of community spirit on display between the various submissions for this vote, with many people involved providing artwork and ideas not only for their own entry, but for their direct competitors as well. In particular Drawolf, who made fan art for so many, and it's really great to see. A link for you to vote will be in the description and pinned comment as soon as Wildcard have supplied it, and we are once again using a ranked system. Place the creatures in the order you'd most prefer, and if your number 1 choice is eliminated, your vote will transfer to your number 2, and so on and so on. All votes matter and will help determine the most overall agreeable creature. I'd also like to take the opportunity while you're here to thank each and every one of you who has supported this channel over the last few months. It's been incredibly overwhelming, and so in celebration of the hopefully approaching 1000 subscriber milestone, a new community Discord has been opened, and it would be awesome to see you there. I'll also be taking questions for a little Q&A video, either on Discord or in the comments, and finally, for anyone wanting to support further, memberships are now active as well. Honestly though, thank you all again for the watching, the comments, the likes and subscriptions. I know for many it's not a lot, but to me it is huge. I hope this video has been useful for you. We'll be back next time to discuss the results, but for now, boom, akalaka, bye bye.